the third session of the day, Blockchain in BFSI, the Breakthrough. And for that, I would request Mr. Hitesh Sachdev, Head in Startup Engagement, Innovation and Investments, ICICI Bank. Mr. Hitesh Sachdev is a seasoned banker with 19 plus years in ICICI Group, leads startup engagement and investments. Instrumental in pioneering ICICI's bank's innovation team, fostering tech collaborations with fintech startups, managing the Fintech Investments Fund and mentors various startups in AI, blockchain and open banking, initiator and advocate in India's first blockchain infrastructure company, BIC, uniting 15 banks as founding members. Previously established the Emerging India Fund, EIF, and spearheaded investment in diverse sectors, adept in SME and mid-corporate business scaling at ICICI Bank. Holds degree in Chartered Accountancy, Company Secretary, LLB, and MCom. Let's give it up for Mr. Hitesh Sachdev.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Energy is low. Good morning. Yeah. So before I, get into the discussion on the, blockchain, I just want to know how many of you have invested into, cryptos? No one? Oh, I can see few hands, yeah. That's it. So, blockchain, it's always kind of being misunderstood, as crypto, and while crypto is one of the use case, which is kind of one of the most successful use case riding on the, blockchain or what we call as, DLT framework, which is distributed ledger technology. And if you, are aware about protocols like, let's say Bitcoin, they are being into existence for last almost 14, 15 years. And till that, the basic protocols have never been hacked, right? So that's the kind of soundness or the power of, those protocols, right? So it started, with this first use case of crypto. And then, there are many more use cases which kind of got developed, right? And then we'll discuss how, it has become more and more relevant in banking, So the, earlier, bank structure, if you see, it was all about, branch-led banking model. Every bank, if they want to grow, they will set up more branches, and then that's the way to grow and, create more distribution, right? And then came the era where people started talking about, convenience of the customer, that, hey, what if I want to withdraw cash at night, or I want to do some transactions at night? And that's where ATMs got into play. And then post ATM, internet banking, came into being, which kind of gives you on your mobile handset, actually you can do all the banking, whether it is payment, whether you need some, loans, everything is available now on your, fingerprint on your mobile, right? So that's how banking evolved. And now, when we look at a couple of models which are emerging in banking, is how do we democratize the financial services? And that's where, blockchain comes into play and DLT framework comes into play. So how many of you have heard about, P2P platforms? Quite a few, okay. So again, P2P is, a way to democratize the entire banking, where on one side there are people who want to lend money, and then there are other side people who want to borrow money. As a bank, what we do, we take deposits and from the customers, and then we play a role of an intermediary. We give those, kind of the capital which we have kind of collected in form of deposits to the respective borrowers, With P2P, it kind of intermediates, it disintermediates the entire, banking, right? So Now, similarly, on blockchain, uh, it's a technology which allows to democratize the entire set of financial services, and it gives power back to the customers, right, or to the users, or to the community which is part of that protocol. So, in any scenario where there are multiple parties involved, the crucial factor amongst all the parties to do a business or to do a trade or to do a transaction is the trust. If you are able to create a mutual trust amongst all the parties, then business flourishes on its own. So that's what DLT does. It allows you to create a trust factor amongst the community which is neutral, independent, biased, not biased, right? It's neutral, independent, unbiased, and the power lies with the community, the participants, right? That's the way blockchain protocols are designed, and that's where a lot of use cases which have come up in banking, they're trying to solve for this problem using, DLT framework. So, if as a participant in any network, what you aspire is that you need transparency. If you are availing services from that network, you need reduced, cost for those services. Instead of the centralization of the power with few entity or, few people controlling it, you want it to be decentralized, where you also want to play a role in defining the rules of the game. So all those things are possible using, DLT framework. So while we were, all the banks were doing individual experiments on, blockchain around 2015, 16, on various use cases, what we figured out is that, blockchain, to harness the true power of blockchain technology, you need many more stakeholders, right? It's not a bilateral game. And then we started thinking about that, how do we bring a lot of banks, financial institutions together and jointly work upon to solve some of those use cases, rather than doing individual experiments, can we approach it in a collaborative manner? And that's where we started a consortium wherein like-minded banks got together. And then ultimately we converted that consortium into a form of a company which is now called, IBDIC, which is Indian Bank Digital Infra Company. The sole purpose of creating IBDIC was to create common infrastructure, to create common protocols, to leverage DLT framework for the benefit of all the participants. And we started, debating about what will be the appropriate use cases for the use of, where we can use DLT very effectively and solve some of our problems. So these are some of the use cases, and which each of them I'll discuss in detail. Now let me take example of trade finance, right? Trade finance is a very cumbersome, paper-intensive, and prone to frauds, right? Because of multiple parties involved, and all these parties operate on different platforms. So what we envisaged, that let's create a common platform where we bring all the stakeholders into one single platform. And those parties are in a trade, you have exporter, importer, exporters bank, importers bank, you have insurance companies, freight forwarding agents, shipping companies, right? If you bring all of them onto one single platform, lot of inefficiencies which exist today into trade finance can be addressed. Also, it's a age-old business. So there are so many processes and systems which are in existence which have never been challenged. People are just following as it is. So when we talk about, digitization or innovation, it's not about converting paper into, digital format. It's also about thinking the entire business model afresh, challenging the existing, processes and systems that, hey, are these processes relevant in today's time. And that's where, what we have done is we have kind of challenged, like, many of the documents you ask in trade finance are not required today. But we still, we keep asking those documents from the customers. So with this single platform, you can do away with a lot of these requirements. Apart from that, there are, like for example, if you want to discount an LC today, to discount an LC, it takes anywhere between 8 to 10 days, end to end, right? With this platform, we can actually achieve that in, let's say, 2 days time frame. So imagine the kind of efficiency it brings in for the banks, for the consumers, for the customers. So idea is that, all the participants of the trade are on this platform. They have an independent node on this platform. They have visibility of the transaction from the day transaction gets initiated. Generally, you get, you are a party once that, as a bank, you get information once the transaction has been consummated or has been kind of agreed upon between, the seller and the buyer. But here, when transaction is entered or when it is initiated, at that point in time, you will come to know. You can actually raise purchase order on the platform between the buyers and sellers, right? Pro forma invoice can be generated on the platform. All those things can be done here. So that's how we have envisaged, the trade finance as one of the first use case and the most apt use case. The other use case which we have been, kind of talking about is asset tokenization, right? This is a very powerful use case when it comes to, multiple ownerships, right? For example, today, when you want to buy a property, generally you will find 1, 2, 3, co-owners of that property. Let's say if it is a large property and all of us in this room, want to buy that property, how do we achieve that? One way to do is that we create a private limited company. All of us become shareholder in that private limited company, and then that company buys the, the asset, and whatever returns are generated from that asset can be distributed, right, amongst all of us. That is one way of doing it. But the other better way of doing it is, how do we tokenize the asset itself? And when we tokenize the asset, the transferability of the asset, the management of the assets becomes much more simpler. It can be a real estate. It can be invoice. Today, the invoice discounting, when you do it, if I am a supplier to a large corporate, tier 1 supplier, it is very easy for me to get the credit, from the bank. But what about tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 supplier who are also supplying to the tier 1 supplier, and in turn tier 1 supplier is supplying to the, the large corporate. Tier 2, tier 3 and tier 4 suppliers don't get that same level of comfort and credit, from the financial institutions. So with the asset tokenization, let's say if you tokenize invoice, an entire invoice, let's say for the namesake, I'm supplier to Tata. Tata, instead of accepting my invoice, it will accept 1,000, if it is a 1,000 rupee invoice, it will accept 1,000 tokens and it will issue 1,000 tokens to me. Now this can be distributed in the entire supply chain ecosystem, right? And their banks can be liquidity providers. So asset tokenization can bring in lot of, possibilities in terms of financial inclusion to the last mile, in terms of, bringing and expanding the market of certain assets big time, right? Which hitherto was not possible. So that's another use case where, it can be, the DLT framework can be very, very useful. Coming to, CBDC, right? We all, I'm sure all of you, how many of you have used CBDC? Okay, I would request and urge all of you to maybe try hands on CBDC. I think we are one of the countries, very few countries where we have launched it successfully and we have tested it successfully and we have done million transactions last month, December. So, and it's very powerful, kind of instrument, right? What is CBDC? CBDC is nothing but, your money which is in the digital format. So instead of carrying a 500 rupee note, you carry 500 rupees in form of digital rupee. It is simple, as equivalent as you are carrying cash. The best part of CBDC is you can program the money. Like, if my, son would ask me that I need, 500 rupees and I want to buy books, okay. I give my son 500 rupees, but what happens if he goes and buys chocolates? I don't want him to buy, chocolates out of that 500 rupees. I want him to buy books. Can I program my money that this money can be used only for buying books? Nothing else can be bought. And it is possible through CBDC, right? So when a government is trying to give a lot of benefits to the, certain section of the society, we also keep hearing a lot of times that it is being misused, right? CBDC can actually tackle that problem. If I am giving you subsidy, let's say of 500 rupees to buy the fertilizer, there is no other way. You can use only, CBDC to buy fertilizers from that 500 rupees, right? So it gives you power to program the money, and which is fantastic. It opens up a lot of use cases, lot of possibilities. Also, when it comes to the cross-border, trade or cross-border transactions, again, CBDC can be used very effectively in terms of, as a native currency, for all your cross-border transactions. Metaverse, I'm sure all of you guys would have heard about metaverse or would have experienced metaverse. What is word meta? So word meta is a Greek word, and it means beyond or transcend, right? So metaverse will change entirely the way we communicate, way we engage. Today, if I use a mobile app, it is a 2D communication, right? It's a more of a one-way communication, right? I mean, there is no experience part of it. I'm not into that world, With metaverse, all those possibilities can be kind of, unfolded. You can actually create your avatars, for different purposes. And the basic human need, which everybody aspires. What is that one need which everybody wants in, every human being aspires? What is that basic need? Hello? Food. What else? Clothes. What else? House, shelter. What else? Recognition. Then money. Then good one. Good one. See, the underlying, the need for a human being is that I want to be immortal. I want to be here forever. Nobody wants, if you ask anyone, everybody wants to be immortal, right? I mean, they want that after even I leave this, why people build, so much of, and, write their names, It's a way to tell or way to communicate that I want to be here even if after I'm gone from here, So that is possible in metaverse. You can actually create your avatar, program it for next 100, 200, 500 years. And your avatar can keep talking to people as if, you are talking to them, So, there are n number of use cases which one can, and you can program your avatar with a lot of tasks which you wanted to do in your lifetime, right? And even if you are not there, it can keep doing those tasks, right? So, these are multiple use cases which are, being possible now because of, DLT. And one needs to kind of effectively use DLT framework for different use cases. There are different protocols, So Ethereum is one of the most widely used, open source protocol, layer 1 protocol. And on top of Ethereum, many startups, many innovators have created fork out of Ethereum and created, something. For example, Matic, right? It's again a fork out of the Ethereum, and much more better. Then we have Hyperledger, we have Corda. So we have many more, such layer 1 protocols which are available. And depending on the use case, you can select those protocols and decide which one to use, right? But one has to think that DLT is one of the enablers. It is not everything or it is not an end in itself. DLT has to be used in conjunction with many other technologies. So standalone DLT will not solve all your problems, right? So it can be one of the components or one of the features or one of the, a driving force behind what you are doing. But it has to be combined with a lot of other technologies, right? I think time is up, and I can go on and go on. This subject is very close to my heart. I think we spoke about all of these things. I would be open for any questions from the audience. We can take some questions if that is okay, or if you have time. Depending on your
Q&A during the networking break. With that, I would also request Mr. Milind Kadam, Senior Director of Sales, APAC and MEA, to felicitate Mr. Hitesh Sachdev.